Ando, thank you so much for coming on the show. Let's talk about why tempeh is the most incredible food that everyone should be putting in their shopping baskets.
Yes, so tempeh is one of Indonesian's staple sources of protein, and the most common form of tempeh is soybean tempeh. So it's literally whole soybeans fermented together, and it would have increased, I would say, improved taste and health benefits and bioavailability of the nutrients. And Indonesians love it. So I'm a bit biased, but I have this genuine love for tempeh because it's literally my first food. When I was a baby, like that's tempeh porridge for my first food, my childhood snack, and now still my favorite source of protein. And it happened that throughout my tempeh journey, I took my PhD study and I researched on tempeh. That's when I realized that this is an exceptional, nutritious, sustainable, and affordable source of protein. So, in a nutshell, that's what I would say of why it's, in my opinion, one of the best foods out there.
And so you've done a whole PhD on tempeh, which is pretty amazing to start off with. What actually is tempeh? Because I think I've heard you say that tempeh isn't necessarily the food that I'm thinking of, but more so a process.
Yes, so I see tempeh in two levels. Level one is as a food, in which the most common one is soy tempeh, soybeans fermented using tempeh fungi, the good fungi, and made into this cake-like source of protein that you can slice it, cook it just like meat. And the second level is tempeh as a process. So because it's a fermentation process, you can change the ingredients. You can play around with more than 22 different types of grains, legumes, and beans. And the end results, you would have something completely different than the common tempeh. So you can literally play around with it, change the shape, change the colors, change the taste, and the health benefits. So I would say that those are the two levels of tempeh in my definition.
Yeah, so I mean, just hearing that, it's kind of expanded my understanding of tempeh as an ingredient. Because I always thought of tempeh as soybeans, and you can add those fermented soybeans. You can add things like hemp seeds to them, or nuts, or like you can change the variety of tempeh that way. Maybe even marinate them as well. But actually, the fact that you can use a different source ingredient to create different types of tempeh was news to me. I guess, like in one of your papers that I read as a result of your PhD, you talk about the type of fermentation that you do and the steps of fermentation. I wonder if you could walk us through what that tempeh fermentation process looks like.
Yes, so interestingly, I did this tempeh meditation one day at the symposium because people wanted to know how the process is going. And I took them into a journey of looking at it from the baby mushrooms, quote unquote, perspective. Right. So imagine that the tempeh making process is a process in which we need to make the baby mushrooms happy. The name of the baby mushroom is, the long name is Rhizopus, right? But we can call it Rizi. Let's call it Rizi, right? So Rizi, as a baby mushroom, needs some basic needs, right? So Rizi needs food, and Rizi likes the food to be tender enough to be cooked, to be clean, and not too hot. And that's literally what how we begin in making tempeh. So whatever your bean is, we soak it overnight to make it tender, and then we remove the skin if the skin is too hard, just like soybean, so that rizi can bite into it easily. And then we boil it, we simmer it, and we let it dry enough. And that is to allow rizi to be able to eat it without burning like rizi's mouth. And now we have the cooked food for rizi. Now it's time for rizi to eat. Right, so Rizi eats unlike us. Like Rizi cannot use hands. Rizi doesn't have hands. Rizi has to use. I would say Rizi's saliva is called enzymes. So enzymes are these biological tiny molecules that do the jobs of breaking foods or nutrients for us. So rizi excretes these different enzymes that can break down proteins called protease. They can break down lipids or fats called lipase, and etc. So these allow rizi to digest the food easily, and ultimately rizi does the chewing, quote unquote, for us, and that would make these nutrients be more digestible for us. So rizi is quite happy with the food. After lunch, rizi is feeling sleepy, and rizi has to take a nap. So to take a nap, rizi would like rizi's bedroom to be a bit breezy, so it has to have some air circulations, and that's why typically we put our cooked beans mixed with our tempeh culture or rizi into containers. So I've used plastic bags. We need to poke holes for every about 1 centimeter. If we use in Indonesia, we use traditionally banana leaves, guava leaves. With leaves, as you fold it, you got enough this air circulation coming from the holes. And now people nowadays use trays, so and put it in the oven, but just turn on the lights for the right warmness, and it has some air circulation. And to have a good nap, rizi requires certain temperature level, and rizi having Indonesian root in in rizi's blood, rizi likes Indonesian temperature. So that would be about 28 degrees Celsius to 32 degrees Celsius would be ideal. And rizi takes long nap. So rizi would spend about, I would say, 30 hours to 72 hours of nap until rizi is completely happy, and rizi grows into this adult happy mushroom in the form, quote unquote, is actually mold, but good mold, in the form of mycelium that gathers together the beans into this solid cake that we can slice, that we can cook just like meat. But whenever we realize it or not, these very beans that are not fermented have much better qualities in terms of protein and taste compared to before these were fermented by rizi. Because again, rizi chewed the nutrients for us, and rizi improves the flavor. So if rizi is happy, then we'd be happy too. We got delicious foods in the end. So I would say that's what tempeh fermentation is.
That's brilliant. I love that analogy, and I'm always going to think of rizi now, this baby mushroom, and nurturing it through the fermentation process. So just to recap that, so you say we're starting with your soybeans. So you soak it overnight, remove the skins to remove the outer casing that would prevent the fungus from accessing the nutrition in the middle of the bean, and then cook the bean, and then you wrap it in a porous material, I guess leaves. But let's say I don't have banana leaf or another traditional leaf to wrap it in. Would a muslin cloth or another sort of breathable material like that suffice, or does it have to be something more specific?
In general, yes, but I would avoid anything that can absorb and retain water, just
Mm.
because rizi doesn't like too much water around rizi. So
Ah,
yeah, anything that's like leaves, even like plastic sheets, baking paper would do. And for leaves, as long as it's safe, as long as it's not producing toxin like poison ivy, it should be all right.
okay, great. And so you have this fungus that secretes the enzymes, proteases, lipases, etc., to break down the nutrients that you find within the bean. And I guess there are some metabolites that are produced as a result of that. Do we have a sense of what additional ones might be other than a simpler protein and a simpler fat structure?
Yes, so besides the amino acids, simple fatty acids, um, what's interesting is that some nutrients were originally trapped in the native forms. I would say in beans, what's most interesting to me is like there are bioactive compounds in various forms of plant-based foods, right? In tomatoes, we got lycopenes. In soybeans, we got isoflavones or genisteins. And these isoflavones, I would say these bioactive compounds from all these different plants, they have been researched and they have been proven to have correlation with decreased risk of various chronic diseases. And these typically address the inflammation mechanism that is one of the main mechanisms that can lead to chronic disease conditions like Alzheimer, even coronary heart disease, and even cancer. And it is actually my PhD research, actually. So throughout the fermentation, apart from releasing the simpler forms of protein, i.e. amino acids, and fats, i.e. fatty acids, the Tempeh fermentation also releases more bioactive compounds that were previously trapped either on the fiber complex or being tied to sugars like glucose. And these allow the bioactive compounds to be more readily digestible for us. So that means that after some Tempeh fermentation, all these health promoting plant based foods can become even more health promoting because of the bioactive compounds that are released more. So yeah, I would say that's my highlight in what's been released by Tempeh fermentation. That is so great.
That's amazing. Okay, so you've got these metabolites, a simpler, more absorbable, different macronutrients, so your proteins and fatty acids and stuff. And then you talk about the humid Indonesian style conditions, 28 degrees to 38 degrees centigrade, and 30 to 72 hours. So when do you know? Let's say I'm doing my homemade tempeh process. When do I know that the tempeh has had enough time, i.e., Reese has had enough time to have his long nap?
Yep. So first you can touch it, and if you feel heat coming from it, I mean it's almost ready or it's ready, and because it will produce its own heat. And the second
Ah,
thing is that you can smell it. So fresh tempeh actually smells pleasant. I love the smell of fresh tempeh. And the third one is actually fine to open the container. It either is leaf or plastic bag or is closed tray, and you check it. If it's solid, compact, white mass, that I would say that's done. And if you see some black spot, that's all right. That's a natural life cycle of Rizi. It would sporulate when it's happy, right? But some people would prefer the completely white tempeh mass, I would say, and that's all right. And if it's not done yet, if you see like the mycelium is quite, it has a lot of gaps, you can always put the container back and leave it for longer.
that's epic. So with that smell that you talked about and this reaction, I guess it's like some sort of exothermic reaction or heat generating reaction. Is it similar to kind of like sourdough bread or like a sourdough starter? We have like this mustiness that smells kind of pleasant, and like something's going on down there.
Yes, I would say there are similarities. I can't quite describe it. It's a bit fruity. It's also a bit beany, but in a good way. Beany, half meaty, right? But if from sourdough we can detect fruitiness, of course, from the some lactic acid bacteria, and from Maillard reaction of the protein reacting with the heat, right? There is none of the cooked notes, right? But I would say
Hmm.
that the number one impression is fresh. So I don't know how to describe it further, but it's fresh, just like, sorry, I don't actually have any comparison for
That's all
this.
right.
Yeah, so it's
It's quite a
yeah,
novel ingredient.
it's a worthy experience, I would say. Yeah.
And with different types of fungi that you would use in the fermentation process, I'm imagining there are different types that you could potentially use to elicit different, maybe nutritional profiles as well as flavors. Is that something that you can do with tempeh?
Yes, so the family tree. of tempeh fermentation is a big, big tree. Right, so we got tempeh, we got tempeh's cousins, and we got tempeh's great cousins. So for the tempeh, I would say the most accessible different starter culture types would be Rhizi, Rhizopus oligosporus, and Rhizopus oryzae. So these kind of starter cultures you can browse online on Amazon, on eBay, on Google. You can find tempeh starter culture, and typically these two siblings of Rhizi would come up. But in Indonesia, just like how there are many types of cheese originating from France, tempeh fermentation is like that as well. So we got at least 40 types of Rizis in Indonesia, and they have different characteristics and different effects, right? So they would taste quite different, and they would result in different looking tempehs. Interestingly, as the most common tempeh would look white, smooth white, but in
Mm.
some cases you can see some yellow spots, a beautiful yellow spot, and in very rare case in which my mom also ferments tempeh. Like 3 weeks ago, we saw this tiny pink patches coming up. Like once we were done fermenting tempeh. So yeah, I would say we're just at the tip of the iceberg of tempeh fermentation. I would say try to play around with these two types of Rizis for now. It's accessible around the world, but more of the fermentation depth coming up with more types of Rizis.
I love that. And so, is it similar in that when you have like a sourdough starter, for example, it's just constantly growing, and you've got to cut it, you've got to give it away to people. Is it like that with the different types of fungi that you use at the start of tempeh fermentation?
Yeah, so I tried making sourdough from scratch by myself, right? Literally not buying any starter culture, but just leaving the flour and water like on my fridge, and whatever comes in, I'll make sourdough from it. But I would say I would not recommend doing the same for temper fermentation, just because one of Reese's cousins is actually quite dangerous. So
Ah,
the main Reese is called Rhizopus oligosporus, is a nickname from Rhizopus microsporus, the species, var oligosporus. So Reese's cousin, which is Rhizopus microsporus var microsporus, we call it Rhizopus microsporus, can produce toxin. So we need to be very careful about it. And it can look the same like Rizi. And so that's why, although the origin of tempeh now it's very likely that, oh, this random person wrapping the boiled soybean lunch in guava leaves, then when they opened it, oh, what is this? A solid white, and the person still ate it anyway. Although that sounds very romantic to do that as well these days, I would not recommend it because of these Reese's risky cousin. Right? So I would still recommend purchasing these food safety tested starter cultures online
mhm.
to begin the tempeh making journey.
Do you believe that story about how tempeh came to fruition 300 years ago of the random person who just wrapped it in a banana leaf and came back a couple of days later to find tempeh?
Yeah, I don't have any other alternative for that yet because, like, yeah, I think the earliest documentation was not even the fermentation process. It was in the 1600s, and it took place in, interestingly, where my grandpa was born in this tiny village in central Java, out of Indonesia's 17,000 islands. Um, it was about this dish, which is literally tempeh made into a curry, and
Mm.
was drizzled on these boiled veggies, eaten with white rice and some rice crackers. So 100% vegan, like this, the origins of many Indonesian foods, served to a prince who would later wrote this story into his journal, and this journal turned out to be an ancient inscription that we can read now. So
Wow.
it originated as the earliest documentation was tempeh is a dish served to a prince. So yeah, I'm still wondering what actually happened for the very first tempeh, but I would not be surprised if there were actually many casualties and doing the quote unquote R&D, the ancient R&D,
Yeah.
right? So that now we have these tailored, optimized tempeh that we can enjoy now.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of the tempeh traditionally that you have in Indonesia is white, and certainly when I do Google Images searches online, I can see it's usually white. But the stuff that we have, particularly in the UK and I think in the US as well, tends to have almost like a beigeish color with some discoloration on the outside that can be black and sometimes with white spots as well. At least from my limited experience of enjoying tempeh. Is there a reason why we tend to get the beige stuff rather than the white stuff?
Yes, so in Indonesia, fresh tempeh could only last for 3 days
Ah,
because the fermentation happens at higher pace, and it gets over fermented very quickly. When it's over fermented, typically we only use it as seasoning. Like for some people, it's too funky, right? And in Indonesia, because I would say it's been around for about 400 years, then food regulation wise, it's allowed to have
mm,
these fresh tempeh everywhere. That it's just wrapped in plastic bags sold in supermarkets. But in Europe, in North America, and in most countries outside of Indonesia that I know of, including Japan, that it is not allowed for food safety reason.
huh,
So we need to do this very mild heating process. So about 75 degrees Celsius for about 15 minutes. And or the technical term is pasteurization. But I don't want to
ah,
scare people off the term because it's pasteurization. That sounds scary. It's actually that's heating it 75 degrees Celsius for 15 minutes using steam as it has been packed. So because of this heat exposure, that the shelf life extends because the fermentation is frozen, and the beige color that you mentioned that comes from the mycelium more pressed into towards the beans. So the
mm,
beans, soybeans have natural bright yellow color, and because typically these foods are vacuum packed for longer shelf life as well, that gives the yellow color that you see.
gotcha. And so, is it fair to say that the fresh tempeh that you can buy, because you're dialing in from Indonesia right now, so the fresh tempeh that you can buy from your local supermarket has probiotic qualities, whereas the temper that we have access to that has that mild processing of heat inactivates the probiotic qualities and gives us some other benefits, high in fiber, high in protein, but not the probiotic qualities.
So in short, yes, but interestingly, I've read quite a lot of research on para probiotics. And it's interesting because, yes, the probiotics, if we pasteurize the tempeh, the probiotics would be dead, right? But then from the remnants, they still stimulate positive immune response. Like we can see a spike in IgG in the bloodstream that says that, oh yeah, the immune system is being exercised. So these paraprobiotics, I don't find it in quite a lot of food. But
Hmm.
in tempeh, that's very interesting because
Mm.
we still have the prebiotics, of course, like from the fiber. It would feed the probiotics in our gut, and from the paraprobiotics, the remnants of the probiotics, it will still enrich the gut microbiome composition and promote positive immune response.
Yeah, yeah, that's fascinating. I love that kind of concept of these paraprobiotics in that I think even having the dead microbial cell walls in the product that you
Yeah,
consume elicits some beneficial effect. So yeah, definitely one to watch there. And so let's turn our attention to the different types of tempeh. So we've alluded to the fact that you can use many different starter fungi, although there are some typical ones that you would recommend from the two different families or the two core families. But there are some other wonderful derivations of tempeh that don't use soybean; they use other beans. What other ones can you speak to that you've tried, perhaps?
yeah. So okay, let's start. with the level of variation in terms of the ingredients. So my grandpa, when he was a kid, he could not afford whole bean tempeh that we can enjoy now. He could
Oh man.
only afford tempehs made of tofu byproduct. So when we make tofu, we basically steep down some solids from soy milk, right, to make it into tofu, just like how we make paneer, just like how we make cheese. So tofu is like the cheese of soy milk. But then there are some residues, some solids that are not steeped down into tofu. And these solids are fermented into tempeh, and it's called tempeh gembus. So this gives this homogeneous texture. It's almost like fish. So my grandpa used to eat this when he was a kid because he simply couldn't afford it. And this says a lot about the depth of how tempeh fermentation can produce variety of end products. So, and now people have been making tempeh using oat milk solids, like soy milk industry side stream as well, which is one of our research projects. So it gives this lens of upcycling that which I think is fascinating about tempeh fermentation. We can upcycle um, foods that we waste, which is like global food waste number is ridiculous, right? About what,
Hmm.
30%, I think. And um, the second one is the like you mentioned, the starter culture. We have this another cousin of tempeh in Indonesia called oncom. So interestingly, oncom looks the color of oncom is like it's pink. It's almost like salmon, people say. So it has different flavor profile. It's funkier, so it's almost like a quite niche flavor for people. And but it says a lot that even the tempeh fungus rhizi can grow together with oncom fungus, neurospora, or what should we call it? Well, yeah, just Nero. Let's call it Nero. Right. So it's not just about picking the starter culture; it's about combining which organisms that we want to grow together with. So in this regard, I've been experimenting with creating high vitamin B12 tempeh, so naturally, no
Mm.
fortification, high vitamin D tempeh, and because it goes back to how rich Indonesian tempehs are in vitamin B12. And interestingly, in the early days, we cannot detect vitamin B12 in tempehs outside of Indonesia because the vitamin B12 comes from a bacteria, good bacteria that come unintentionally from the soil, from the river, right? So now Better Nature, we're trying to make this in hygienic condition, adhering to food standards and regulation. And the last one I would say is the container. So tempeh fermentation, it will follow the shape and the volume and the space given with the container. So if you ferment tempeh in star-shaped containers, the end products will be star-shaped. If you ferment tempeh in the sculpture shape, you can create a sculpture made using tempeh fermentation. So now it expands again. It could be beyond food. It could be art as well. But yeah, we can go endless with these. And yeah, by adjusting the temperature and the humidity, we can prolong the fermentation, but have the mycelium dig deeper into the beans, or you can increase the temperature and shorten the fermentation so that it has milder taste and be less funky. So yeah, I would say.
That's it. That's incredible because as you're talking there about increasing vitamin D or increasing B12 and tinkering with the nutritional profile, the way we traditionally do it today in the UK is fortification. So we fortify, for example, white flour because we've essentially stripped all the B vitamins out of it, and we have to add essentially a multivitamin like product to the flour to ensure that it meets nutritional values. But if there is a way to naturally process this incredible ingredient, it just stands to reason that's probably what we should be doing rather than trying to tinker with just like adding individual nutrients to the end product.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think one key word about tempeh is wholesomeness. Right.
Mm.
So that was the age where people tried to make supplements, right? Oh, yeah, vitamin C is really good for your body. Yeah, consume this vitamin C every day. Wait a second, vitamin C can only work together with vitamin E. Have this vitamin C and E supplements. Oh wait, sorry. We need also fiber to protect them, so that to make them like survive the intestines, so that it's catching up, right? But then from whole foods, science sometimes still catching up that the whole foods contained a lot more beneficial nutrients that we might not know all of them yet. And I think tempeh is one of them. Right,
Yeah.
so with the bioactive compounds protected by the with the fiber and protein and fat, I would say, and now vitamin B12 and vitamin D. What's beautiful about tempeh is that I would say, we can tailor the fermentation process according to what we want, but still retain the value of creating something naturally nutritious and wholesome.
Totally, totally. You did this massive review of tempeh as part of your PhD. What did you find in terms of protein? Because I think, I mean, you've got a story about why you got into tempeh to do with the protein, right? Maybe you could tell us a bit about that, and then we can get into actually what you found in terms of the nutritional comparisons with other animal-based sources of protein and tempeh-based protein.
Yes, when I was doing my undergrad, I was obsessed with bodybuilding. So I wanted to have six pack. I wanted to have the highest possible muscle mass and the lowest possible fat mass. I was really obsessed. So I tried different sources of protein. Right, so I tried consuming like meat every day. Didn't feel great at all. Like eggs, I got allergy from eating too much egg and milk as well. I always got allergy. I was intolerant like from it. And I tried this whey protein. It was expensive, and I got acne from it. So I was struggling, and using my biotechnology background back then, I tried to look up what source of protein that I can eat sustainably. Sustainably means that I would not feel bloated. I would not be financially broken. I, and I would eat that happily every day. So I found these papers quite scattered. That tempeh's nutritional profile is very potential. And wait a minute, tempeh is typically on my dining table almost every day, and in many people's dining tables in Indonesia. So I thought, ooh, this could be sustainable. And when I looked into it, and now that I've summarized it in the review paper, it's mind blowing. I could not believe it at first, but after summarizing, I would say, screening 250,000 articles and narrowing it down to like about 300 articles, and 60 of them were about health benefits, now I believe it. So, for example, compared to beef, tempeh contained similar amounts of protein and energy and iron, significantly higher levels of fiber and calcium. I was shocked about calcium. Significantly lower levels of saturated fat and sodium salt. And I thought, tempeh is not inferior to beef, even like what. But sometimes there's this interesting history about tempeh, that tempeh has been used as an analogy among Indonesians to convey colonialism, because one of the traditional ways to make tempeh was using feet and to peel the skin, just like wine, just like how we make wine traditionally, right? So the first president of Indonesia uses this analogy as for analogy for texture as well. Do not have tempeh mentality. Do not be a tempeh nation. So
Ah.
it is one of the explanations why, compared to tofu, which is another source of protein, popular originating from China, tempeh is not as popular because it's been buried under these, I would say, negative branding or paradigm among
Ah.
Indonesians where it came from. But now is the rise, piggybacking on the protein momentum, the health, natural, nutritious, wholesome food momentum. This is the age of tempeh.
Yeah, I didn't know about the historical background of how tempeh was discouraged as a sort of. It sounds like it was an analogy for primitive cultures, and that we had to move beyond sort of like our ancient roots. But actually, we're seeing a resurgence of traditional ways of eating that is typically more plant based, typically more legume and grain based. So that's fascinating. I did not know about that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's why it's a new age for tempeh. It's a down of the age of tempeh. Just because like I can't think of anybody who does not need an affordable, nutritious, and sustainable source of protein. Like
Mm,
everyone. And what's interesting is that it's relevant for malnutrition as well. So malnutrition can go two ways, right? Undernutrition and overnutrition. Undernutrition, one of my emotional reasons to begin my temper journey is encountering children with protein energy malnutrition. And I thought that amongst this crisis of moms feeding the kids with instant foods, like instant noodles, all these shortcuts for flavors, we need more foods like tempeh to naturally nourish like these children affordably, right? And
mm.
for overnutrition as well, with the rise of chronic diseases linked to like unhealthy eating habits, tempeh can be a solution. It's naturally low in carbohydrate and is rich in healthy fats and low in saturated fat. I see hope, so I would say tempeh is a food of hope in this context.
Yeah, yeah. You're convincing me for sure. We talked about protein a couple of times here. One of the pushbacks that a lot of people have for comparing protein sources across each other is a protein is not necessarily a protein, right? So a protein may have a completely varied essential amino acid profile. With beef, you tend to have a lot more of the methionine and leucine and these sort of master amino acid blocks that lead to protein muscle synthesis and muscle protein synthesis and all the rest of it. Does does tempeh compare when we look a little bit deeper at the actual amino acid profile to some of the other animal based proteins that we find?
Right. So since we've talked about that tempeh can be made from different kinds of beans, now it would be depending on what beans we use, right? But in terms of soybean, I think soy is an exception. Like people, yeah, like like the pushbacks I got in promoting tempeh is that oh, what is plant-based source of protein? Typically, plant-based sources of protein do not have complete amino acid profiles, right? And soybean tempeh, which is the most researched one, has complete amino acid profiles because soybean is quite an exceptional crop. So I would give
Mm.
credits to all those people who I would say optimize soybean as a crop so that now it has complete source of amino acids. What's interesting is that throughout the fermentation process, it altered the levels of amino acids. Depending on what kind of fermentation we do, which organisms we use, which temperature that we apply. But we see, for example, leucine wise, it can increase like tremendously after temperature fermentation, and potentially because of the I got two hypotheses. One is the release of the inaccessible ones previously, or even the synthesis by Rhizzy itself, right? And yeah, I would say in general, what I can say is that temperature fermentation can alter amino acid profiles so that we can create complementary sources of amino acids in our diets, right? Because that's the
Mm.
best, right? Just like puzzle pieces, we need to find like pieces that can click with each other. And I think temperature fermentation allows us to do this. So, oh, we need these levels of amino acids for these diet, then we can do that technically with temperature fermentation.
That's epic. So your typical tempeh that you might find in a UK supermarket, is that as a result of the fact that we're using soybeans? Would that naturally contain all nine essential amino acids in sufficient amounts?
Yes.
Great. Okay.
And what's
And
interesting is that the glutamic acid. So the longer the fermentation happens, the more glutamic acid we would get. And that would come naturally with umami flavor. So that's why the longer we ferment our tempeh, the more umami rich we would get. And even longer, the over fermented tempehs are used traditionally in Indonesia as these natural seasoning. So obviously
Mm.
this natural MSG replacer, because MSG contains monosodium glutamic acid, right? So these over-fermented tempeh can be used to replace MSG because it's this umami rich. But yeah, just speaking about amino acids.
That's good to know because I know about the negative effects of MSG, but I love it. So, so that's really useful. With regards to calcium, that's an interesting one because I remember doing a bit of research around calcium and finding out that some quite unusual products are quite high in calcium, like sesame seeds, from which you get tahini, and tofu was one of them, and I'm guessing tempeh would be as well. Are they again absorbable micronutrients, types of calcium that are absorbable in the human digestive tract?
Yes, I would say. And for some minerals, tempeh fermentation can change the charge. For example, for iron, like Fe2 plus or Fe3 plus. And the same with calcium. Like tempeh fermentation helps the digestibility of these nutrients, not only by releasing the micronutrients into micronutrients, but also to modify the charges of these minerals, which I found mind blowing. So, yeah, the short answer is yes.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Because I was going to ask you about iron as well, because there's always this argument around, okay, yes, beans have got iron and green vegetables have got iron, but is it in the form that is absorbable and will have a sufficient effect on blood iron levels in the human body? And I'm guessing that that is the case.
Yes.
Epic. And with regards to the other nutrients that we were talking about earlier, so those novel bioactive compounds under the umbrella term of phytonutrients, so non-essential micronutrients, but still nutrients that we know have health benefits in the body. We mentioned a couple of them. What ones stand out for you, and ones that you came across in your research?
Yes. So, yeah, I really like your explanation, right? So these bioactive compounds, these are bonuses, right? So our body doesn't ask for it, but if we give it, then our body would be happy, and the happiness is expressed through decreased risk of chronic diseases. So I did research on isoflavones, which are the controversial phytoestrogens, because people have been afraid from the sound of it. Oh my god, like, yo, if you're male, then don't consume soy products, right? But then what's interesting is that reading like tons of papers about the correlation between like the soy consumption with the decreased risk of cancer, the one that's been the strongest correlated one is phytoestrogens. So I think the strongest correlation is between phytoestrogen intake with lung cancer and prostate cancer. I would say those two are the main conditions linked positively with phytoestrogen consumption. But then these phytoestrogens have different forms, and my objects of research were genistein, diethyl, and glycine. So these are the types of phytoestrogens, the types of bioactive compounds of soy. So what I observed was that after tempeh fermentation, we see these three bodies changing in forms, right? They were previously bound to sugar molecules, and they can be released after the fermentation process. And because they're released and they become more bioavailable, they theoretically are assumed to be able to give more health promoting effects because of that. And apart from that, the tempeh fermentation also promote new types of phenolic acids. So phenolic acids are also one of the bioactive compounds that we don't know the exact details. We don't know if Rhizi actually synthesizes it. We don't know if actually Rhizi um, releases it from different parts of nooks and crannies of soybeans. We don't know, but we see this positive effect. And I also tested it on different cancer cells, and I saw it with my own eyes that this component in our foods can inhibit the growth of cancer cells, can increase the antioxidative activities of cells. So, yeah.
And some of these, I appreciate you talking about the phytoestrogen arguments there, because I think it still rages on just from the word itself, and the potential for estrogenic effects. But there's different types of estrogen receptors that we have in the body, alpha and beta, and these work on different receptors that actually have a net beneficial effect. So some of the other things that people always talk about are anti-nutrients, this whole idea of anti-nutrients, and you find them in various pulses, whether it be lectins, saponins, in various grains. What are some of the anti-nutrients that you might find in tempeh? And we're just assuming that we're just talking about soybean based tempeh here. And what are the potential benefits of having those anti-nutrients in the right doses? Because my understanding is that these have hormetic effects.
Yes, so the main anti-nutrient in soy tempeh is phytate. And phytate, what is typically not wanted from phytate is that it could compromise our ability to absorb iron, which is an important mineral. And through tempeh fermentation, we can actually decrease the phytate level. So, me personally, sometimes when I eat like just boiled soybeans, digestive-wise, I do not feel too great, right? So I feel bloated. But with tempeh, never ever. So these to me like, oh, could this be like in the same context that it increases the bioavailability of overall nutrients by also decreasing the anti-nutrient level.
Yeah. It's a really good point, because I think a lot of people who are scared of eating beans and legumes, I completely understand, because many people have mild to moderate symptoms of bloating, gas, especially if they're coming from a low fiber diet. Tempeh appears to be a nice go-between, if you can flavor it properly and put it in the right recipes, of which there are many in the doctor's kitchen, and many other sources that you find on the internet as well. A common question we get is, how much tempeh do you need to consume, let's say on a weekly basis, to have some of those long-term benefits that have been ascribed to it? So but potentially the cancer preventative properties, cardiovascular protective properties, etc.
Right, so most of the population studies and clinical studies were conducted in Indonesia with the context of Indonesian populations. Right, so I would retrieve the dose from how much Indonesians eat tempeh. Right, so tempeh contributes to 70% of Indonesians' daily protein intake. So
Oh,
that's
wow.
beyond tofu, and that's beyond eggs, that's beyond any meat in Indonesia. So typically Indonesians would eat, I would say, about a fist of tempeh every day.
Wow.
So it's either for lunch or for dinner, or for both, but very rarely for breakfast. Right. So a fist is typically Indonesians' rule of thumb.
Okay, a fist. So that's how much you need to
Yeah.
eat to have some of the benefits that we've talked about earlier.
Yeah. So they would range from, I think, 80 to 100 grams per portion.
Okay, 80 to
A
100
meal.
grams portion. Okay, yeah, that's like a cup size, or about a portion in UK standards of beans, which is 80 grams. So yeah, I mean, it sounds like a lot, but actually it's pretty achievable. And what's your favorite way to eat it?
Me, I like it stir fried. So in Indonesia, there's this recipe that we marinate the tempeh first in water and with crushed garlic and crushed coriander, a bit of salt. Then it would, because of the mycelium, tempeh has this sponginess that it can soak up flavors really well. So it would soak the water. Then after that, we fry it. Indonesians love to deep fry. But because we marinate it first, the water content in the tempeh gives some cushion at least,
Ah,
like for this process. But the whole point is to brown tempeh. So you can brown it in any other way. You can air fry it, and the
mm.
point is to have this Maillard reaction because brown tempeh tastes much better than unbrowned tempeh. Then after that, we cook it with just a bit of oil. Then we cook the shallots, garlic, chili peppers. Then put the tempeh in, drizzle it with Indonesian. We call it kecap manis, it's sweet soy sauce. So
Oh, I
fermented
love
again, the
ketchup
fermented
mayonnaise.
soy meeting
So
fermented
good.
soy.
Yeah, yeah, it's so good.
You're right, kecap manis, and we shave a bit of this coconut palm sugar. Right, because this heated palm sugar would create this glaze or caramelized coating. So it will look like this shiny, dark, glazed cubes of tempeh in the end. Then we put some chopped, I would say, leeks or green onions on top of it. Eat it with hot white rice, and usually with some condiments, just crushed red chili peppers with one garlic and a bit of salt for dipping, and with some rice crackers. I would say that's my main tempeh dish. And
That
we call it
that
tempeh orek.
sounds
Oh, we got
incredible.
the recipe as well.
Tempeh, what's it called? Tempeh ora.
Orek. So Orek.
OREK. I'm looking that up right now, and I'm gonna make that recipe and maybe even a version of it on the Doctor's Kitchen app as well. So that is epic.
Oh yeah,
That
please.
sounds
Yeah.
so good. Listen, Ando, this has been wonderful chatting to you. I could talk to you all day about all the different types of tempeh. I'm sure we're probably gonna have to do a little cook up session when you're next in the UK for sure. But thank you so much for your wisdom and sharing your incredible knowledge around this incredible ingredient. And I hope more people put it in their baskets. It's a wonderful health ingredient.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really enjoyed the discussion, and yeah, I'll look forward to like cooking out on tempeh orek one day, London.
If you like that video, then you will love the full library from the Doctor's Kitchen podcast. We talk about inflammation, immune health benefits, and much, much more about food as medicine, including this video right here that you can click through right now.